The Object 260 is a tank that can reach amazing speeds and dominate the battlefield, but before we start annihilating the enemy, let's check out what makes this tank so great. With its incredible armour and unstoppable speed, it will make short work of our opponents. Now let's have a look at today's replays and see the power of the tank in action. So what exactly makes the Object 260 such a powerful force to be reckoned with within World of Tanks? Well, it is that speed, which you've got 60 kilometers an hour top speed, which is absolutely fantastic for a tier 10 heavy tank. Remember, being a heavy tank, having the armour of a heavy, you know, it's not the best armour in the game, but it certainly works very well. And it also has the ability to, you know, have consistency with its gun, because there's a lot of tanks in the game that, you know, might have a brilliant gun in terms of alpha or penetration, but if you can't hit the damn target, then it's not much use. Whereas this vehicle right here certainly does have the ability to actually hit its targets with 0.34 dispersion base, and of course that can come down depending on what equipment you're using, and it makes it very usable. How you're able to kind of duke it out on maps like Highway to what we're seeing here. Now, on this sort of matchup, what you'd be focusing on is hopefully getting some easy shells into the opponents you're coming up against, where you're side scraping against them using any way to kind of hide that big lower plate that the Object 260 gets, because from the front you can see right here it does get this chunky lower plate. Imagine a Object 252U or the Defender. It's essentially the same sort of tank but a tier 10, and of course can go 60 kilometers an hour. It has that kind of hull armour that looks very much like a Defender, and I guess that's really where Wargaming could kind of get them somewhat in the same category. Maybe not in terms of how good they are at the moment, but certainly as a performer within the game and its armour layout. But either way, really nice start to the game. Skip ahead to a little bit more action where we can showcase the 260 in a bit of a different scenario. So what the Object 260 is brilliant at in the game is obviously moving forward and getting into a position where you can outflank opponents. You're seeing here coming up and finding the E4 to be in a position where he can easily get a shell of damage in. He obviously swaps to the APCR round since there is a wall and heat will just get absorbed by the wall. So a nice little choice of ammunition there. Really nice to see, and of course shuts the E4 down. That's totaling 3,400 damage combined. And of course you can see a nice little shell into the side of the VZ locking down the tracks. Of course that's exactly what you want to be doing with this tank. The problem with side scraping in this vehicle is that, as you'll see right here, when you try and side scrape, people will hit the upper plate. The upper plate is fairly strong, so you can usually bounce quite a few rounds, but the problem is that when people have such high penetration, things like premium rounds obviously just butter straight through that upper plate. So that's the real problem, is that yes, you can bounce a few rounds, and when you're side scraping, ideally you want them to hit the side of your vehicle, obviously, rather than that frontal plate, and it can make actually trying to side scrape a bit of a pain within the game. But it's not all too bad, because even if you don't bounce, you can still do consistent damage that you'd be hoping to do with a vehicle like this. So really nice to see a little flanking manoeuvre, obviously getting into this position, showcasing the side scraping, but I think it's time to move on in this replay. So most vehicles in the game, you know, having picked up 6,600 damage at this point in the battle, there was a lot of fighting towards the 279E under the tracks of the railway, and at this point you'd be probably crapping your pants coming up against tier 10s like this, the BZ75, you've got the 279E, and obviously the VZ, all of which can be a real pain in the front and the back. And of course you can see he just kind of hugs that corner, make sure he's up close and personal, and he's being just a nuisance for the enemy team. Now most tanks like the Object 260 might be able to get up into this position using speed. You know, you've got loads of vehicles in the game that have the speed, but they just don't have the brawling capabilities that this tank has. It's very much like a IS-7-esque vehicle, I guess. Then the two tanks are in a similar sort of category, with the Object 260 maybe being just slightly more all-round, I guess, compared to the IS-7. There's some minor differences. Obviously the IS-7 has much better turret than the 260, so you've got that advantage, but you also then suffer some of the gun handling. It's not like extraordinarily different, but it is definitely different. And that's really where your choice of tanks like this one and your traditional IS-7 maybe come into kind of question, and which one you prefer, how your gameplay style is usually within the game. It kind of depends upon how you're doing. But you can see here, really nice movement, really nice kind of shimmying as you go towards your opponents, really good at brawling. 260's fantastic at flipping the front and wiggling so that you can avoid taking the shell altogether, and that's ultimately what you would want to be doing in this vehicle if you were to actually pick it up as part of the long mission marathon. Well, not even mission marathon, but the marathon of a mission that is the Object 260 grind. So that's really where the Object 260 comes in really nice. And of course, it's very interesting to see what you guys think about the 260. Do you think it's as kind of annoying to play up against as maybe you're witnessing in this game, where the opponents just cannot deal with it? And I guess we can kind of move forward with this, because I want to show you some other things about it, rather than just, you know, being able to brawl. As you can see, it's capable, more than capable, to do that under the right hands. So one thing that you can do, literally straight off, is that you can reverse side scrape. You do have the ability to do that, much like the IS-4, things like that. You have this sloped armor at the front, which can obviously allow you to get penned as you pull around a corner. Whereas, you know, if you're reverse side scraping, it can be a little bit more difficult for opponents to actually pen you. Obviously, you do actually have to only expose your side when reverse side scraping, because any bit of the back of the tank is not going to be very nice to see. But either way, shuts down the Foch 155, and we can move on. So most heavy tanks in the game would be really annoyed at the fact that there is struggling to find the enemy team, whereas the 260 doesn't have that problem. It has that speed to maintain and go towards opponents, like the Batchat, for example, who's in the center of the map, and he's able to get there really quickly and pick up some extra damage against him. And that's really what you want with this vehicle, and why it kind of separates itself from some of the other vehicles you can pick up in World of Tanks, and really why I find this tank to be super fantastic, and why I think everyone should always go towards the 260 at some point. Obviously, it's quite hard to be able to obtain through all of the missions and everything that you have to complete, but at the end of the day, it's something extra that you can do, and it gives you a bloody good tank at the end of it. So yeah, really do like the Object 260. So 260 does manage to find the EBR, but of course, being World of Tanks, he does actually bounce off of the EBR somehow in some unbeknownst parallel universe where the EBR is essentially a mouse, and he does it exactly again, because French wheeled light tanks are completely fine and balanced. But either way, strips of arm manages to shut him down, and that is the end of the game, picking up 11,948 damage in a perfectly balanced game in the Object 260, showcasing at least one aspect of why this tank is very good, being able to brawl really well on a very heavy centric map, or at least taking it into the most heavy centric place on the map. But don't worry, there's some more heavy centric gameplay in the next replay. Let's jump into that now. So what's better than dealing just under 12,000 damage? Well, of course, managing to pick up 13,600 and have a Kolobanov's medal. So that's what this gameplay is going to showcase, and it's definitely the better of the two replays, but the whole point is to showcase all aspects of the 260, give you a good idea as to what the top level of this tank can do. And obviously you guys can always add in bits and snippets that you found about the tank, what you think is really good, what you think is bad, and obviously whether you think that this is a completely balanced tank in the game. Now, straight off the bat, you're seeing the unfortunate use of the BZ-75's top of the turret, which is absolutely not a place where you'd want to be getting hit in the BZ, since it just sucks. And at this point, some heat rounds, really nice to be able to go straight through that. So that's what the 260 offers in terms of rounds. It gets the best of both worlds. It gets APCR as standard and heat ammunition. Heat ammunition is beyond good, having over 300 pen, and in fact 340 pen on your heat rounds, which means that pretty much any vehicle that you come up against from the front, you'll be able to pen in some regards, at least somewhere, if you're aiming at the weak points. So really easy to go through things like Mauschen's turrets. The only problem is trying to hit them. Obviously you don't get any bonuses to RNG in the game, but you can always try your best with a Soviet vehicle. But either way, straight off the bat, you're seeing some good utilization of this corner fighting, exactly the staple of the 260, and then of course as you move through the battle you can redeploy using the speed. And I guess you guys have seen a lot of corner fighting, so I'm not going to waste your time anymore as we kind of showcase this. But as you kind of push forward, you can see up against like vehicles that are obviously very surprised about the speed and the maneuverability. Obviously didn't really think about the fact that the the 260 is going to push up. I mean, 260s and 260 players are usually very aggressive, and they love coming up against opponents that maybe aren't quite ready, or they get flustered by vehicles like this. So really nice to see, and you can see the determination on this 260 to continue his assault on the enemy's hit points. And yeah, he's certainly been doing very well so far, having picked up 4,800 there. So fantastic to see. High rolls, obviously lovely to see, but as you kind of move through your games, and if you do decide to pick up the Object 260, you'll find that there are some weak points, and I won't lie, there are a few weak points that I guess we could showcase here whilst we're thinking about it. And that is that the cupola is a weak point. I mean, it's very hard to hit if you're on the move and going at 60 kilometers an hour, because, you know, typical World of Tanks player just rolling around, just being able to kind of dominate opponents at 60 kilometers an hour and getting the RNG to suit. But if you are going slow and you are corner fighting, people can go for that cupola, and it does sometimes become apparent, but it's not like the worst thing on the tank in terms of weak points. The weak points are, of course, that lower plate, but it's still pretty good. And as soon as you start angling, people can pen here, and there is also the inner drive wheel, which can be penned if you're side on, but it's very difficult to be able to consistently do it at range, so it never really becomes too much of a problem. It's just you got to note it down for when you are corner fighting and pushing up a bit aggressively. Now, in this game, you're seeing he's managed to be able to pick up 7,800 total damage in the game. There is 12 vehicles on, well, the enemy team have been able to pick up 12 vehicles. It is now 5 against 2, which is not particularly the greatest score, or 6 against 2 even. And don't worry, because that will certainly change within the few coming moments as the WZ on the enemy team pushes towards the Waffle Panzer IV. But don't worry, because the 260 is not always down and out, even when there are 6 opponents against it. And having done or taken out 3 tanks so far, he's able to shut down a 4th, and now you have a CC on full health. There's 4,000 damage left on the opponent's tanks, and it's not particularly great because you haven't got full health. It's not ideal, but he does manage to kind of luckily hit the BZ, but maybe not luckily. I don't know, it's down to you. But he shuts him down, and now it's a 1 versus 4. It's more manageable. There are a few tanks on low hit points, things like the WZ, I believe. You had the Emil, and the TNH is on full health pretty much alongside the CC. Now, the WZ is, of course, pretty low, but not on anywhere near a one-shot. But he does ram into him, allowing him to bring that hit points down low enough so that he can shut him down in one shot. Lovely work, and having picked up 10,700 damage so far, you would be very kind of prominent to try and push that damage total even higher and make this one of the best 260 gameplays out there. And you can see the player is obviously very skilled. 2 marks, and that changes at the end of this battle, managing to pick up 3. So yeah, really fantastic one. But the gameplay itself, pushing towards opponents with this tank, is obviously what you want. This is very much a tank that can carry at the end of the game, because remember, with speed, mobility, good armor, good gun, you have that flexibility with this tank to push forward, and not just push in a traditional sense, but actually get forward and be consistent with your approach. You know, if you decide that you're going to go after one vehicle and you want to consistently hit them, you're going to be able to. If you decide that you want to just try and hightail it out there, get into a better position and maybe go hold down, you can do. And so it's all of these things that can combine into one with this vehicle that make it so powerful, and under the hands of a very skilled player, this becomes outrageously good. So what you're seeing here is some over angling of the side, or at least some angling more than you would expect with a vehicle like this, because what you can do is you can sit there, you can side scrape out, you can overexpose the side armor because that stops them from being able to hit the frontal plate, and that allows you to kind of pull out, take a hit, probably won't actually be able to pen you, and you can consistently punish them with the good accuracy and aim time and dispersion values that you have with this tank. So you're seeing here the punishment that he's dishing out on the CC. Obviously CC is thinking, maybe I should have just rushed this guy, and they probably should have, considering both of them were autoloaders, but instead the Emil one decides, you know what, no need to punish this guy when he's reloading. I'm going to wait until he takes out my teammate, and then of course starts focusing on him. So I think they gifted it to the 260 in the end of the game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because it makes this result even better. And you can see with a great win, can he finish him off with that last shell? Of course he can, and he picks up 13,644 damage, and of course 9 kills with the Kolobanovs against 6 opponents. So a brilliant game. Yeah, really nice to see. And of course the Object 260 showcased there in both games. Very aggressive, very fast, and can dominate opponents over and over again consistently. Hopefully you did enjoy this video, and of course make sure to subscribe to see more videos like this, and of course analysis and tips for World of Tanks. So I hope you do enjoy those videos, and if you want to check out more, there will be some on screen that you can click through and have a look and see whether you enjoy those too. Thank you and goodbye.